Good evening and welcome to the May 4th board workshop meeting. If you'll all please stand and join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Oh, roll call would be a good thing to do first. I wonder, okay, Mr. Gooding, can you call the roll, please?
Mrs. Pickle-Antonio? Mrs. Mooring? Here. Mrs. Coates?
Here.
Mrs. Horn?
Here.
Mr. Manley?
Now, if you will all please stand and join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. So we are going to begin with our director reports and discussions, and it looks like we are starting with Mrs. Reed. Oh. Boy, I'm all over the place today. Is there a motion to, are there any recommended changes to tonight's agenda?
There are none.
Thank you. Is there a motion to adopt the agenda as presented?
So moved.
Thank you, Mrs. Horn. Is there a second?
A second.
Thank you, Mrs. Mooring. Any discussion about that? Mr. Gooding, can you call the roll?
Mrs. Mooring?
Yes.
Mrs. Coates?
Yes.
Mrs. Horn?
Yes.
Mrs. Pickle-Antonio?
Yes.
Motion carried.
Okay, we'll try this one more time, and maybe Burl will get the hang of it. We are going to director reports, and I will turn it over to versus Ms.
Good evening, President Pickle-Antonio, members of the board. Thank you for having me this evening and allowing me the opportunity to share about some work that we've been doing in the HR office. I'd like to start tonight by talking about something that you're going to see on the May board agenda that we're really excited about. We have been searching for, I think pretty much this whole entire year for systems that can help our human resources processes with efficiencies and improvements. So we've actually been working with the Treasurer's Office as well as technology. Our team started at the beginning of this year with really just identifying where some of the inefficiencies were happening so that we could figure out what we needed to fix and what we were looking for in these programs. So we vetted several possible solutions. We met with several companies to hear about the products that they had to offer. It was a tough process because we were limited in terms of what we could do with our payroll software. Because of the state software system that we use, many of the programs just didn't communicate in the way that we needed them to communicate. So we found a couple of solutions that we felt would potentially be a good fit, and we've been vetting those for the last couple of months. What we found with the processes in general is that our processes are very manual, they're very paper-based, they're very labor-intensive, and in many cases they're redundant throughout multiple departments. So I'm going to give you one example that we came across, and I'm probably forgetting some of the things, but when we have new hires coming into the district, just one small snippet of what happens. In the HR office, Rebecca and Lynn both manually enter new hire information into multiple employee databases. We maintain our master employee database. We maintain an employee matrix that shows changes that our staff administrators can view. Rebecca also maintains our biographical sketches, and then we also have to enter that system into the technology help desk so that technology knows that we have new hires. On top of that, payroll then has to add that same information into state software. On top of that, Pam Schilling has to enter all of that information into Infinite Campus. And then in addition to that, Lynn has to enter all of that same information into Frontline for our ASOP absence management system. So again, very labor intensive, very redundant, and much higher probability of human error when you have that many people entering the same types of information. So the HR management system is going to be designed to be our primary source for employee data in the school district. The system will, in one way or another, we are hoping, feed into those other systems that I was just sharing with you, so that we'll have that one master place where information is entered and contained, and then the information, the exact same information, will then flow into those other systems. So the system, again, will have a few benefits, and this is just a snippet of what we're hoping to gain from this program. Right now, the way that the system will work is that we will have all of our positions managed as units and attached to funding sources. So positions will not necessarily be people, they'll be these units of FTEs, and that's how the system will kind of run. We will also have electronic onboarding processes and checklists. You can assign due dates within that. You can assign workflows so that multiple people can see where our employees are in their onboarding process. So no more will Sue be hiring an intervention specialist and have to come back to me and say, did they do this? Did they do that? Do they have this finished? Where are we in the process? You will be able to go right into the system and see where that person is. They also can send automated reminders. We can set all of that up at the beginning, so Rebecca isn't following up with 74 new teachers to make sure that they have one tiny little piece of paper sent into us. We'll have the ability to assign users to monitor that onboarding process, so there's different levels of access that different people will be able to have. It's very highly customizable throughout the entire system. You can, through the onboarding process, we can add videos, we can add surveys, we can add training links, so everything's going to be able to be contained in that one space. We can manage employee contracts. We talked about employee contracts not long ago. We can track licensure and generate emails and letter reminders from the system. It will pull our leave information from ASOP into the system. So again, there's a dashboard where employees and supervisors can see that information on a daily basis. Supervisors will be able to view employees' information again based on their assignment and have access at any time to live updated information. The access will also allow us to generate reports. You know how hard it is for us to pull data and information right now, so it will help us to create really nice reports. We will also be able to manage an offboarding process, which has been a challenge. So there are checklists, workflows, all of those different things assigned to offboarding. And then, of course, there's the employee self-service part of the system. So employees will also have access to all of their information. They won't have to, I just had someone over today calling Rebecca to come over and view their paper HR file. So a lot of this will be really simple for people to be able to access at the drop of a hat. The system also has some other capabilities that we are considering. One of the things it can do is also manage our recruiting and application process. So right now we're with Frontline for that, and I chose Frontline because it's the system that most districts in Central Ohio use, and it's really easy access for teachers to be able to complete applications. So we'll manage that and see if that's something we might want to consider in the future. It also has a component of benefits, open enrollment. So that's already built into the system. If at any point we decided that we wanted to move over to utilizing the system for open enrollment, we could consider doing that. It also digitizes our non-OTES performance evaluations. So if we choose to do that in the future, we can take all of those evaluations and add those to the system so they'll have the same capabilities and workflows attached to them. And then we are looking at, if our proposal is approved at the board meeting, it's about a 90-day implementation period. So we're hoping that we'll be able to get started with that right away and have lots of good new stuff up and running for the start of the school year. So a couple other really quick things. The certificated hiring update that I always give you, I'm not going to go into detail like I have, but we've had 74 openings so far, and we are down to 9. So that is really exciting. And then finally, I just wanted to let you guys know we are doing a really cool activity in June. The HR office is hosting a professional development in collaboration with the Ohio Department of Education. It is called Human Capital Essentials for Classified Leaders. So ODE had created with Battelle training for certificated leaders in education in HR. It was really successful. I did that class a couple of years ago. It was wonderful, and they have developed a similar type class for classified supervisors now. So we offered to be the host site for ODE for Central Ohio. So that's going to be on June the 7th here in the district. We have 15 supervisors from our district who are attending, and there's a total of 39 from Central Ohio signed up right now. So we are really excited about that opportunity as well. That is all I have this evening. Any questions?
Does anybody have any questions for Mrs. Reed? Mrs. Coates?
Just out of curiosity, what is the name of the software company?
Yeah, sorry, it is UKG, formerly Kronos.
Oh,
Okay.
so the state uses Kronos. Did you have another question? I was just going to ask, actually, Mike, that's a lot of feedback. I was curious the name of it too, and I guess I was curious who else uses it.
Columbus City Schools uses it, although they do not use the payroll portion. They use all other parts of the system. There are other parts of the system that we're not currently purchasing. The ones I talked about are the ones that are included in the package that I'm looking at for human resources. There's also the payroll piece that Mr. Gooding is looking at as well. The school district that we're working with right now that currently is also on state software and is a new implementer is Fairfield City Schools. So I know Scott has had a lot of contact with them as well, but they are all across the country in school districts. They are, this system is school district specific, K-12 education specific.
Mrs. Mooring?
Cost is being presented. It sounds like there's going to be some pulling of information from like ASAP. Or is that all embedded in the cost?
It is, and if there are quite specific questions about this, Matt might be able to explain it better than us. There are some parts of the information sharing will be us kind of extracting information from one system and then uploading it. Some systems may be able to flow automatically, but yes, that's all included. There's no additional cost for any of those pieces.
Any other questions? I had one other question about the 9 openings that are remaining. Is there any pattern to those 9 openings?
Special education is a challenge. We've had a lot of openings in that area this year, so we are getting pretty close to filling most of those positions, though. I think at least 2 of the 3 that we currently have should be filled in the next week or so. We have 1 ASL teacher that we were able to hire. We're still looking for 1 more, so that's been a challenging one. The principals have been great with coordinating and getting people in and getting these interviews done as quickly as we possibly can. So for us to be talking in the beginning of May about having filled that many positions is just really incredible. So appreciate all of their support with that.
Yeah, that is amazing. This is an incredibly busy time of year, so to be able to
Definitely.
get it down that
Much
much
been
is
great.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Anything else? Okay, thank you,
you.
Mrs. Reed. Next, we are going to move to Mrs. Wigging, Ms. Wigging for an update from special education.
Thank you. Good evening, President and members of the board. I have 3 things I'm going to share with you this evening. The first one is just an update on catastrophic cost. We've talked about that in the past, and we were able to submit our annual report on April 28th. The Special Education Department worked in collaboration with the Treasurer's Office and our EMIS coordinator, Transportation Department, and we were able to submit 44 claims for catastrophic cost. That's the supplemental payment to districts when we exceed the threshold for educating a student with a disability. We anticipate the maximum reimbursement would be a little bit over $487,000 back to our district, and that would be a revenue to the general fund. We will see that it usually shows up to our district about June, so we'll know the exact dollar amount in June. The next thing I'd like to share with you, which was very exciting last month, is that Gahanna Jefferson Public Schools organized and hosted the first Central Ohio school-based board-certified behavior analyst cohort in Franklin County, Central Ohio. It was a 2-hour meeting, and we were able to have a total participation of 6 local board-certified behavior analysts come to Clark Hall. It represented 17 local school districts here in Central Ohio, and it was really a rich opportunity for us to brainstorm with other public school districts in how they utilize their BCBAs, their board-certified behavior analysts, in the current practices of public schools. We are fortunate that we have one this school year, and you have already approved a second for next school year, with our goal of being preventative, with our goal of being proactive, and also supporting students with significant behaviors throughout our district. So we compared the role and current practices of BCBAs in the public school setting. We shared and created a Google Drive where we are all contributing to resources and sharing them among our districts and not creating the wheel every time we come up with that obstacle or we identify a need as it relates to data in our districts. We also discussed cases confidentially, and we were able to just brainstorm and fishbowl scenarios and put our minds together and figure out solutions to some of our most challenging students. We identified some essential learning or goals for us as a group, and we were able to identify our next steps and schedule a meeting for early fall of 2023. So that's an exciting new group that we are excited to host. Finally, we are in the midst of extended school year planning, and I thank you for approving the 10 staff members at the last board meeting that you had in April. We are again required to provide extended school year for students who qualify due to either not making progress during the school year in a meaningful way that we measure very quantifiably and we review regularly, losing skills over a break, an extended break, or being on the cusp, just right there of learning a brand new skill, and we know that the profile of that learner is going to lose that skill due to an extended break. Last school year, we provided services to 33 students, and earlier this week, we had 22 who've already qualified, and we have many meetings to go before the end of the school year to analyze that data. If we need to, you may see on a future board agenda additional staff members if that number significantly goes up. We provide extended school year services for all related services and educational services as well. So I wanted to thank those 10 staff members for being willing this summer to provide their services and also for the coordination of that's happening right now so students can be scheduled. It can be coordinated so parents only make one trip versus two to extended school year services. It's a well-oiled machine that I'm excited to this year host at Black Lake Elementary School, which is our new location. Those are the 3 updates right now that we had. We do have a number of things happening in May. We have our special education high school graduation happening later this month. On Tuesday, we have the Ability Games at Chapelfield Elementary School, and that will be an exciting event that starts at 10:45. We also have the annual picnic that's happening at the parks later this year, where all of our low incidence programs get together, elementary through high school, and celebrate diversity and inclusion. And then finally, our gear graduation will also be happening in May. And I'll get all of those dates to you. I don't know why my second page didn't print tonight with those dates on it, so I apologize not having those in front of me. What questions can I answer this evening?
Oh, every time I turn that on, it makes that noise. Does anyone have questions for Mrs. Wigging? Go ahead, Mrs. Horn, and then I have one.
As far as the catastrophic, you said 44 claims this year. How much was that? How many claims did we have last year?
I could look it up. It was, I believe, 4 more. I think it was 48.
Okay.
It was just under 50.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So I know you said you were going to follow up with those dates for us. I don't recall that we've been aware of those graduation ceremonies necessarily before, and I wondered if there's any opportunity for us to be able to, I feel like we are, I understand that these are really meaningful ceremonies for the families, and I guess what I'm wondering is there any possibility that the board, the board is who is conferring diplomas. I understand these ceremonies are a little bit different because some of those students do have the opportunity, right, to walk in our regular graduation ceremony. But I guess what I'm saying is we would love to be able to participate if there's any place for that.
Absolutely. The students who are going through the graduation ceremonies have either already participated in the graduation ceremony or they will be. And these are more intimate opportunities where students might feel a little bit more comfortable and have more intimate celebrations with the teachers that have worked for them for many, many years, although It is an amazing opportunity, and I'll get you those dates if you'd like to also attend.
That was my understanding. The way that you just described those ceremonies, that fits with my understanding of what they were. But I know recently we had been asked, or I had been asked, why the board didn't participate in those ceremonies when we do participate in other ceremonies. So it's helpful to have that explanation, and it would be great to see the dates too. Thank you.
I don't know why they're not printed, but I'll get those to you.
Okay. We are going to move on, unless there are other questions for Mrs. Wigging, I think we are going to move on to technology. Our Director of Technology is Mr. Blackwell.
President Pickle-Antonio and members of the board, today I'm just going to share a few brief updates about some of the projects we've been working on in the technology department as we finish out this year and head into another busy summer. So our new help desk system is up and running. We have it in kind of a soft launch mode where we have it up and running alongside of our old help desk system. And this overlap period is giving us a chance to get feedback from the teachers and make some final tweaks to the settings to make sure it's set up how we want to serve our students and staff well. We officially launched it on Monday this week, and we've already had 135 tickets put in, and of those, 66 have already been resolved. So people are starting to get used to it, and I think it's going well so far, but we do still have a lot more work to do to get it just how we want it. And another thing we've been working on recently is starting to set up some of the back-end data integration for School Links, our replacement for Naviance as our student planning platform. Right now, our high school roster data is flowing into that system successfully. We've been able to log into School Links using an administrative account and see our students and teachers in there. And our next step in that process is to write some data queries to get information that's not included with the standard rostering setup, such as credits, counselor assignments, student flags, like whether they have an IEP or a 504, and information like that. And we're also getting ready to do our annual Chromebook collections. We collect Chromebooks from our middle school and high school students over the summer. One reason we do that is because we don't have mental health staff monitoring student searches for, troublesome activities over the summer, and we also do that to prevent loss and damage that can happen over the summer. And this year we're going to be utilizing our new help desk system to facilitate that collection. We're trying something a little different in the middle schools this year. We're actually going to collect them in the classroom. Like for example, at Middle School West, we're going to have the math teachers collect them in the classroom using the new software with as many tech people as we can spare on hand to help them through that process. At the high school, with their schedule, we're going with a traditional large event in the gym and the library where they'll all turn in their devices at the end of the year. And a few other projects we have lined up for this summer are classroom hardware improvements at East and Royal and Goshen, a new firewall being installed, 911 improvements on our phone system so that if somebody were to call 911, the office will get a message saying which room that call came from. And we also have the new data visualization tool, Tableau, to work on this year, and several other small projects. That's it for me for this evening. If there are any questions.
Anybody have questions for Mr. Blackwell? Go ahead, Mrs. Horn.
I just have a question on the Chromebooks and for the iPads from the elementary school. All of those get turned in, correct? So my question is, just because I've been volunteering in some of the schools with kids that are still utilizing those, is there any way that we don't have to have all of them back in at the same time, that if a student and their families needed it for a month, or so many weeks, that we could have that be on a rolling basis? Just knowing that a lot of the kids that I work with have been taking them home at night and working with them, and I just would hate to see the progress that they're making, kind of stall out a little bit before they come back for the summer. Not all families have other laptops for their kids to utilize over the summer, as far as, because I know like Dreambox and Lexia, you can get into them from any type of computer, but for some families that's not possible. So just wanted to kind of raise that as a question. I think we asked that last year too, and it was like everything has to come back because we have this process of everything getting updated, but
We're kind of in the early planning stages of what we were calling a lending library for those families who need to borrow devices over the summer. We're hoping that some of the devices we recover from our graduating seniors will be in good enough shape that we can get those refurbished and use them for that purpose. We don't have any of the details yet or how that'll work, but it is something that we've been discussing.
it's wonderful. Time is just going to be of the essence to try to get that communication out to people before the end of the school year, and it's right around the corner already, which is amazing in many ways. But I just want to make sure, but that would be great to be able to do that.
Anything else for Mr. Blackwell? Okay, thanks. We are going to move on to the business office. Mr. Lofton.
Good evening. Start off with the high school stadium. The visitors amenity building, the exterior is complete. They'll still be working on the interior for a couple months, finishing that up. Plumbing, electric, walls, flooring, all that good stuff that they'll have to complete there. The track and athletic turf, the asphalt for the track is complete, and striping will start May 22nd. So I think the end of May, beginning of June, it's really going to start to take shape, and everyone's going to get a good feel for what it's going to look like when it's all said and done. The field events are complete. The athletic turf is 90% complete. The rain the last 4 or 5 days has really put a damper on it, so we had to halt. So they hope to have it done by the 10th of May. So scoreboard steel will go up May 22nd. So we'll start to see yeah, like I said, I think the end of the month, beginning of June, you're really going to start to see it taking shape. Blacklick Athletics, this week the softball building was turned over, passed all the inspections, which is good. Being able to use those restrooms and some storage facility will be great out there. We are waiting for the contractor to provide a timeline for us to, we have some issues with the softball fields that need to be addressed once the season's over. We're waiting for that timeline to be presented to us so that we can get a good handle on when it'll be complete early this summer. So the tennis court asphalt is curing time. We're in the midst of that. And I think we're looking at the 3rd week of May before they'll start to paint it. It really depends on weather permitting. We did a flood test last week, and it came back really good. So that flood test is basically to see if there's any places where there's puddles that are going to sit up, because puddles and tennis don't go together. So it came out very good. There were a handful of low spots, but easily fixable that we'll get ready. They'll do before they paint. So, and the parking lot lights by the multi-purpose field and softball fields are complete, and we'll start to see those on at night. There's some timing mechanisms that they're still working through, but I think they'll be here shortly. Within a week, they'll be on a regular basis at night. So that's all I have. Any questions?
Questions for Mr. Lofton? Go ahead, Mrs. Ward.
So I was actually out, I don't know if it was last week, watching a game at the softball, which everything looks wonderful out there. The only thing that came up was parking, kind of in totality along there. So just as we're looking at all of any opportunity for more parking, I think would be great to have, whether it's along the sides of the road, as we're looking at how we could complete that, because it was, if you have baseball, softball, practices going on out there. It was pretty tight.
And we still have some contractor equipment out there. So as soon
True.
as that starts
True.
to move away, that'll open up a handful of spots too. So.
Okay.
We've also spoken about just being conscientious in our scheduling. This is the first time that we've been scheduling so full out there, and we do have some varsity sports like lacrosse participating out there that we won't have once our stadium opens. And even I was at a family event at Black Lake Elementary the same night as baseball and softball. Going forward, all involved will know not to plan these on the same evenings to help alleviate that. So we think scheduling can help quite a lot.
And I would like to just add, Monday is the first tournament game for our varsity softball team. They're 23-1. They're ranked 6th in the state. So next week is when the fun starts. So first two games, the first game will be at home. If we win, second game it'll be at home. So that's Monday, Wednesday of next week.
The time for Monday?
It'll be 5:15.
Questions for Mr. Lofton? I know. Thanks. We are going to move on to communications. Mr. Starkey.
Evening, Madam President, members of the board. Tonight I wanted to dive into social media for the district, and I couldn't start my conversation without giving a huge shout out to Judy Hangstebeck. She is often the engine behind our social media, and so a lot of the work that you see on our channels is a direct result of her great work. So I wanted to start there. So social media can be one of the deepest topics in communications because oftentimes it's the most public, but it also gives us the most data in a lot of senses, and we can really see what resonates with our community and things like that. So a lot of our decisions in social media are data driven because we have that access to the data to be able to see what works and what may not work. And so, love it or hate it, social media is often one of our most used communications tools in our toolbox. So when it comes to social media, consistency is key. We work for 2 posts a day, Monday through Thursday, and then Friday morning and Sunday evening to get that consistency, to try and up our ratings and the algorithms on each social media channel. We go for 6 in the morning during the morning slots because that's when people are waking up, and what's the first thing you do? You grab your phone, and oftentimes you're scrolling social media. So we love to get people before their feet even touch the floor in the mornings. And then we aim for the 7 o'clock evening slot on those days where we post in the evenings because our analytics often show that that's our highest traffic time. And that kind of makes sense. People are winding down from dinner, getting ready for bed, looking forward to the next day. So those are the 2 time slots we often target with our social media posts. And to show sort of the buckets or the checklist that we work from for a lot of our posts, Judy came up with CHILI as an acronym. So C stands for celebratory. That's the first thing we want to do is with our posts is celebrate our district. Show the great work that's happening in our classrooms by both our staff, our students, our community members, whatever it may be. So that's really the first thing we look for is showcasing our district in a celebratory way. The H stands for helpful. This is, think of bulletin board information, a flyer for State of the School is upcoming, or a coffee and conversation, or here's a reminder on how to sign up for newsletters if you aren't a parent but you're a member of our community. So that's more bulletin board information, falls under helpful. So those 2 are sort of the content buckets. The next 3 are sort of the characteristics of a post. The first is identifiable. And this is often used in our graphics. You'll see a lot of our graphics that we use on social media to celebrate School Bus Driver Appreciation Day or School Lunch Hero Day. They're very on brand. They have the same color schemes. A fun little nugget is on each of our graphics. You'll see the district logo in there somewhere. It's a fun little seek and find that we play for those that know about it. So it's something fun to try and hide them where he can be found. The L stands for likable. Obviously, we have a different voice on social media than maybe a law firm or a bank. And so as a school district, we want to be approachable, we want to be welcoming. And so the likable plays a lot into our voice that we use on social media, use of emojis, things that are sort of eye-catching to stop the scroll. and for people to like and comment and share on our posts, because again, that helps us in our algorithm. And the E in Chile is equitable. And so we want to highlight every building, we want to highlight every program, every course, all organizations, clubs, teachers, staff. And so we focus on that E when it comes to when was the last time we were at a certain building. Let's swing by there and get some pictures of some learning or activities, just to make sure we want our social media channels to represent every student and staff member in our district. And so we really take a lot of pride in making that happen. So that's sort of how we grade ourselves on our social media posts. When it comes down to it, our goal is to stop the scroll and share our story. That's how if we were to whittle it down to one sentence, that's our goal on social media. So I wanted to dive a little bit into analytics. We base a lot of our decisions off of our Facebook analytics, because that's where most of our parents and community members find us on social media, is Facebook. So in general, our posts hit between 1,000 to 2,000 reach. And we look at reach because that's the amount of eyeballs that have seen our posts. And so if something comes in under 1,000, we have a conversation of how can we improve that for next time, what may not have worked. And the same goes if something comes in over 2,000 reach. What made this a rock star post that we can replicate and duplicate and continue to increase our reach on our future posts. Looking at the bigger picture, since the start of the school year, Facebook averages about 80,000 reach a month. Not the start of the school year, I'm sorry, the start of the calendar year, since 2023. Averages about 80,000 impressions a month. With a 10% engagement rate. Again, we know that's where our community looks for us the most when it comes to social media channels. Instagram has around 37,000 reach in a month on average, with a 7.5% engagement rate. That number is slowly increasing, though. A couple of different reasons for that. Our students are more likely to have Instagram than they are Facebook, and our younger parents. Our parents are getting to that demographic where they're more likely to have Instagram than Facebook, and so we see that number slowly growing. Still got a lot of room to grow before it reaches the Facebook level, but definitely trending that direction over time. And our Twitter averages about 11,000 impressions a month, so we know that that's the third option for social media, but it's still a tool in our toolbox to use. And so I wanted to end by highlighting some of our top celebrations. In April, our highest impressions on a post was one that you all are very familiar with. It was the post about Kendall Smith, the Girl Scout, who was at our last board meeting. She was the highest post in April. The second highest post was celebrating the high school art gallery that was in the second floor of Clark Hall here in April. And then the third highest post was about the pair of sisters who were head cooks in 2 of our schools and retired after 30 years each, serving our students. Looking at the entire calendar year, again starting in 2023, our highest reach on a post was on School Resource Appreciation Day. The second highest was a snow day in January. I think that's a hint that people really resonate with snow days announced on social media. The third highest was the aforementioned post about Kendall Smith, the Girl Scout, and then the fourth highest post was a Lincoln Live video about Mr. Singer. And so those are our biggest posts so far this calendar year. And so again, we use that data to, it's clear people love human interest stories or snow days on social media. And so we use that to drive our posts further on. So that's all I have tonight. Any questions?
For Mr. Starkey? Go ahead, Mrs. Moore.
Looking back through my notes from previous meetings, and we had talked at one point about sending out a version of the quality profile to our community. Where are we on that?
So we are looking at revising our quality profile for this next school year to make it more mailer friendly. To make it more of a, you're speaking mailer terms? Yes, so to make it more mailer friendly, more of a brochure, less of a magazine, but still keep the same quality content in there. So that's something that we'll be working on refining as we put the new content in for this school year that we're currently in.
That's our goal. That was our goal for our next year, is to create the quality profile for next year in a mailable form. So it had already been created for this year. Yes. For next year it will be that way. Yeah. Correct. We will have a mailing quality profile next year and perhaps a construction update as well next year. For the fall of 23, we'll use this year's data to create our new quality profile in a form that can be mailed at the beginning of next year. School year.
School year, not calendar year.
Yes, sorry, I don't even think calendar years anymore. I'm sorry.
Any other questions for Mr. Starkey? Okay, thank you. Next, we will move on to curriculum. Ms. Holloman.
Good evening, President Pickle Antonio, members of the board. I also have a few updates from the curriculum department. We are winding down the school year, but there's still a lot going on. The first update, so on Wednesday, we had our final bold cohort with the high school team. It was a half-day session that we had with them, and we started the morning with their share out of the inquiry units that they did the second half of the year. And so I wanted to share some of the essential questions that were guiding some of the units that they did. One of them being, how does the human anatomy influence robotic design? How does the reliability of test results affect the lives of people? And that one specifically started with drug testing, but then moved into like testing for diseases and things like that, and just the impact, the reliability of the assessments. That was in the math class. What would make GLHS or Gehanna better? What makes us care about fixing an issue? And is war inevitable, and who's to blame? So those are some of the questions that the units covered. And the teachers, once again, they spoke a lot about the increased engagement that they noticed from the students when they did these units. They did say that they take a little bit longer than a typical unit was, but the kids were very much so engaged in learning the content and seeing how it actually applied to what was happening in the world, or things that they were that were relevant to them. So it was very exciting. I think the teachers also reflected and said this second time around it felt a little smoother for them, although we're still very much in the novice stage of learning when it comes to inquiry, but they felt better about the implementation the second time around. And so then we spent the rest of the morning after the share out just kind of coming back to academic expectations and practices, and what are the things that we know we need to have in place and kind of have solidified in order to make the implementation of inquiry learning and the type of teaching and learning that we want to see in the new building come through. And so we were able to brainstorm and start to process that as the cohort team with the teachers there. And so we're very excited, again, as I mentioned, and one of the teachers in the session said, you know, very much still novice in our learning with inquiry, because we learned a lot in this 1 year to be able to try some units, but there's still deeper learning to be had. But we're all very excited to now bring the rest of the building along in the learning, and so continue that as we start to move towards the new building. Next, wanted to give just a quick summer school update. You kind of heard a little bit of snippets of it from some of the other directors, but summer school registration is open right now. We will be at the preschool in Clark Hall, Lincoln Elementary, Middle School South, and the high school this year. And we're currently monitoring the numbers, but what we're kind of seeing that they're a little slower this time around than what we've seen in the past. Excuse me. Specifically, when we are looking at the numbers for our registration for the new credit high school courses, those typically fill up very quickly. We still have several seats opened in all of the courses right now. As of today, we have 7 students signed up for the first session of speech and 6 for the second session. And typically, we're at a wait list where we're adding a third course, so there's that. And then we have 11 signed up for health, 14 for PE, and 2 for personal finance, which that one is a new add for us in the summer this year. We don't have the numbers for the makeup credit. Those don't usually start coming in until towards the end of May, when students have a better idea if they're going to pass a class or not. So we'll have those updates. Registration actually closes June 1st, and so we'll know the numbers there. We do have all of our classes covered in summer school with the exception of one, kindergarten enhancement. So we typically are able to offer 4 sections of that in the summer. This year we're only able to offer 2 because we couldn't find a second teacher for the kindergarten enhancement class. And that's the class for students who are currently in kindergarten and just would benefit from additional time. So we'll only be able to offer 2 sections this summer, but all of our other courses are covered, and we want to thank again the teachers who have signed up to work summer school this summer. In addition to, we have several of our AIs have stepped up, and they'll be in the role of teacher, and some of our aides as well as our out-of-district teachers that come in for summer school. That helps us to be able to staff our summer school program. And so as I mentioned, the registration closes June 1st, so then we'll have final numbers after that. Okay. And then we are also offering the enrichment experiences again this year as well. I actually just found out this afternoon before I came over here that the COSI STEM Week will be able to be offered. We weren't sure if we were going to be able to do that one in particular. That had been pretty popular in the last 2 summers because we didn't have a staff person for that. But I found out today that we did we secured a teacher. So we're getting that information together, and then we'll get that sent out to families for those who might be interested. But in addition to that, we have singing and mindfulness, journaling club, and Fit Kids will be offering as enrichment this summer, and those will take place at Lincoln Elementary. Okay. Moving on, so we've been working on developing our PD plan. Every year we put together a PD plan for the work and the learning that's going to happen in the next school year. It has been a goal in collaboration with PDAC that we would get that information out to teachers before they leave for the summer. That has been a goal we've been working towards for the last several years. This year we're actually going to make that goal, so I'm very excited about that. We actually have been working really hard to put it together, and we've always been able to give an overview of the theme of what our PD focus was going to be, but we weren't always able to kind of iron out some of the details. And specifically, as you know, we're adding 3 additional days, PD days, to the calendar and giving teachers an idea of what is the learning that's going to happen on those days. And so we will be able to get that out to teachers this May. We actually have our last PDAC meeting next week, and so we've gotten feedback from PDAC, we've gotten feedback from principals, the curriculum team has been working, and so all of it coming together will show the final draft, and it'll be ready to be released after next week's meeting with PDAC. So very excited about that, where it gives just a little bit more information, again, like I said, specifically to the learning that's going to happen on the different days that we have for PD. Because we have a lot of big work that is continuing on, and we know that that's going to take professional development, it's going to take that learning time, and we want people to see how that fits into the days that we have added to the calendar. So very excited about getting that out. And then the last thing I want to share is, again, along the same lines with PD, but this is for learning that we're going to be offering in the summer. So 2 different opportunities. In the past, since the pandemic, we actually haven't hosted like a full summer session of learning that the curriculum team has facilitated in a very long time, like since the pandemic. We've put out some, like a digital platform where they can kind of choose their own adventure on learning. And so we're excited that this summer we're actually going to bring back, we're going to do the summer GJPS conference that we're going to be offering to our staff. That'll be on May 31st and June 1st. And the idea is it'll be 2 days filled with sessions that they can choose on various topics. And so right now, actually, it'll be released in the Inside the Pride tomorrow, will be the different sessions that they could possibly choose from to let us know what their interests are. And then based on that, we will build the final schedule and push that out to teachers. So that'll be an opportunity for our staff to do some learning in the summer. And then we're also kind of going to be doing a similar format for our building administrators, because we also know, like, they want to be involved in the learning, and sometimes it's not as easy to get to it during the school year because they got to run the building. So we also, and this is actually in collaboration with all the coordinators, are also putting together several sessions that our building leaders, including the assistant principals, will be able to choose from. And the same, it'll be 2 days, June 13th and 14th, but it'll be more focused on the leadership side of learning for them. So we're really excited about those learning opportunities. And there's a host of other things that are happening throughout the summer as well, but those are the 2 main ones that we have for professional learning.
Thank you, Ms. Holloman. That's wonderful. I know I have one question, but does anybody else have questions? Okay. The question that I had is about the inquiry learning. So it sounds like there was a lot of discussion and feedback from among staff. Was there any feedback from the students who participated with that inquiry learning?
We did not collect, we did not formally collect the feedback from the students, but that was a part of the discussion that we had with the teachers about the feedback that their students were giving from them. And that was kind of where that increased engagement, a couple of ahas that they said that the students was like, I didn't even realize that this was connected to that, or just again, how they were able to see how the content was related to the study of the question that they were, driven by the question that they were focused on. A lot of it, so I share the essential question to kind of give you an overall picture of what the unit is going to cover, but then there are different phases in the cycle of inquiry. And so one of the first stages is that kind of it's the launch that we call it, but it is that to build kind of background knowledge and get that engagement in kids. And so that might be where they're watching a video, or they might be reading a passage, or if they're, I know that the one question about how can we make people care about fixing things, they went to CNN's website and kind of took a look at, it was the website specific to, and now I just lost the situation that it was specific to, but it was designed in a way that it asked questions like, will pictures make you care? Will numbers make you care? Will, and then it kind of laid out the information. So they use that kind of as their anchor to start to get the kids thinking about bigger things that they might want to see if they could get people to care about. So, sorry, that might have been me. Those kinds of things, I think, really help to pull the kids in differently than let me teach you this skill or give you this fact first, and then now we apply. So,
Adding on to that, what is the plan again for next year? Just if you could refresh our memory on, are you expanding the cohort?
Actually, that'll be included in the PD plan with those days. We're actually bringing the whole staff now on board and going to kind of take them through the same type of learning that the cohort went through, but it'll be drawn out a little bit. It won't be as fast as it was for the cohort, so it'll give them time to kind of go through that progression of learning, and it'll happen on those PD days.
Can I add one thing? Sorry.
We
Tell where
also-
your voice was coming from.
Sorry.
That was-
We also wanted to just share that we have increased professional learning opportunities for our classified staff as well. So that's been we've had a concerted effort toward increasing those opportunities and mapping out over the course of next year on our days when students aren't with us, because we added professional learning opportunities, how to include them in the learning that's going on in the buildings, as well as have some topics and learning that's more focused to their roles.
Fantastic. Go ahead, Mrs. Mooring.
Folks from the classified groups that are helping you come up with these ideas, kind of like your PDAC from the professional certificated side?
We do not have a PDAC with the classified staff, but there has been feedback gathered through the collaborative group that Shay and Adam have been working with, and then also through our food service department. And so just really trying to, make sure when we're talking about de-escalation strategies, things that apply to all of our staff, making sure our bus drivers have those experiences, that they also are getting training aligned to our equity and access plan. So some of it has come through the collaborative groups, but we don't have a designated professional development committee like we do with certified staff.
The second question that I had, and you don't have to answer this right now, but I'm kind of curious about the numbers going down in the high school summer school class offerings. And I just wondered if, again, you don't have to answer this now, but I'm just kind of curious why that might be. What's going through my head is I'm wondering if in the height of the pandemic, when people were taking more classes online, did more students become aware of those, and I'm not even going to say what it's called, but other opportunities to get those credits. And again, you don't have to answer that now, but at some point it would be interesting to know.
And so I think that's a great question. We actually talked about that in general because while I listed the numbers for the new credit, that because that's easy for us to see right now, we're seeing as like it's very slow across the board, and so even our enrichment numbers are lower right now, and so I think I'm sure that there's a component of like the different options that are available online for several people. I also wonder if some of it is people are ready for just to have a summer break, and so because we do start back up. I mean, it's essentially like a week and a half, and then we're back in the summer school, and we finish before July, but that's still, you know, to a kid that's a lot of their summer. So I'm wondering if some of that has to play too. We'll know specifically, like once registration closes, just what the impact has been. But we've been having that conversation as well.
Perhaps it's because people aren't really feeling like it's summer yet, so planning for summertime. I mean, we have somebody who brought a parka with them tonight.
Does not feel like summer yet, so maybe the numbers are coming. Yeah, it'll be interesting once you have final numbers to see what that looks like. Okay.
The other question I had on that was, is it the number of 8th graders? Because like I know my kids all took summer classes just to get a jump start on the things that they wanted to get because they had it kind of mapped out. So it's not that our 8th grade class is smaller, right? As far as that, is it? I'm just as curious for the 8th graders not to be taking advantage of it as they have in the past. It's just interesting for me.
I didn't look at the breakdown of the grade levels that are signed up so far, but that was, I know when we were first, when I was first processing it, that was my first indication, because typically we don't get out of the first week when registration opens before those classes are closed, and to still be sitting with open seats in all of them is just interesting. So we'll just continue to watch it.
Me too. Okay. Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Did you have something, Mrs. Coates? Go ahead. Yep.
Question, Eric, I'm sorry. Communication survey, any insights or too early to share? Are you still?
I think Joe might be better served to answer those questions.
Sorry, Jill.
Yes.
That Eric and Judy are on as well, but we are still in our final collection stage of phone calls being made to our targeted group. So I think at the regular board meeting, I'll be able to give an update on some of the data. Okay.
Okay. Thank you, everybody. We are going to move on to item D, 1, and it looks like I am going to turn it over to Mrs. Horn.
Okay, Parks and Rec, I think I brought up at the last board meeting in my update, Dr. Deagle and I met with Stephanie Farrell, the Director of Parks and Recreation, in regards to the whole link to literacy. And she is, since that meeting, our last board meeting, has submitted the application for the grant. Part of the grant process is for us as a board to give our support, or at least our intent, that we would be willing to work with the Parks and Rec to work out an agreement of an easement behind the land that we owned at behind Clark Hall. Just to remind everybody what the link to literacy is, it's going to be connecting the pathways to the library. So there's going to be 2 different processes. One is going to be coming more from Creekside, off of Shell Road. There's, I think it's Walnut, that dead ends. It will go behind the skate park, across the little creeks there into the back of the library. So that will be one phase. Then the second phase is going to be from the library, connecting it to Hamilton Road. And that would be behind the apartments, behind Clark Hall and the parking lot, and then Gatsby's. So that's going to be a little bit more involved, just from the standpoint of the size of the creek back there, kind of if they're going to need like a retention wall, other types of things. But again, that work would commence if the grant is approved sometime this fall. But they would start on the other side with the one coming from Walnut. The second part of it would be the connection to Hamilton Road. I know that we have, as a board and as a school district, a lot of things going on with the city right now. Many different things, parking requests, the buildings, many different topics. I think that, my recommendation is really that it's an intent that we would work with them on something, and I think that we just need to kind of call that out, that in the hopes of all of us working together for a common goal, especially with the benefit to the community. But again, that's something in the details to be worked out at a future point in time to make sure that we are getting out of it as much as we can too in the process. Questions?
I have a question. So if I understand you right, the letter of intent is one of the items that is needed in order to submit the grant proposal?
The grant has been submitted, but it's accompanying documentation that would need to go along with it for consideration.
And one of those accompanying documents is a letter of intent,
Yes.
not just from us, but
Right.
from each of the entities.
Exactly.
Okay. Who is the grant? Who are they applying for? The
ODNR.
Oh, okay.
Mhm.
Okay. And do you have any information about the time frame of the grant application process? Like, when do they expect that they'll get an answer from ODNR, and then from that point forward, that's when we would begin negotiating, or you don't know?
I know that it would be, I have a board meeting next week.
Okay.
But I know that it was going to be at some point this summer as far as the turnaround. And then they would start the development of the work. And once the grant is approved and they have everything lined up, they only have so many months to complete it.
Okay.
Like with all grants,
Right.
that's typically the case. I think it's like an 18-month window
Okay.
to have that done.
Okay.
And it also falls into the overall city's capital improvement projects too, because the
Right.
grant money will only be a portion of the cost of the project. So it still has to fall in line with getting approved through the city's normal process as well.
Sorry, last question for me. Do you know, I assume that the other entities, I'm just assuming, are the other entities like the library, is Gatsby's another entity?
So it's Gatsby's in the apartment complex. Mhm.
Have those letters of intent already been, do we know?
They had asked for them. I don't know if they have signed ones yet, but I know that Stephanie was pretty clear that the apartments already were wanting to figure out a way to connect everything. And then I think the next one, which the biggest impact, if I remember right, was going to be Gatsby's.
Okay.
Out of the three, as far as the length of the easement and the complications of the easement too, with the creek right there. So, but I haven't gotten an update. I don't know if you have.
So are you recommending that this come onto our next board agenda for discussion and vote about signing the letter of intent? Or what is the recommendation?
The recommendation, I believe, that we had talked about was trying to get this approved in the May 18th board meeting, as far as signing the letter of intent.
Okay.
And I can ask for some more specifics on the timing of like the negotiated
Okay.
timeline, and we could add that in if that is something that you guys would want to see within the document to be
Okay.
more clearly stated.
Yeah. Did you have a question, Mrs. Moore?
Asking for an easement, but for perpetuity. So then I say to myself, well, why wouldn't we deed this if we're never going to have access to it again? Why the avenue of an easement that still gives us some tangential responsibility for that property instead of deeding it to the city? Do you know why the path?
I know the area that we're talking about is even behind the fencing. So to your point, it's not an area that we even utilize.
Right.
With everything. So, I mean, that's a very good point on that to consider. So maybe it's a matter of changing the language on, it's more the intent that we agree to work with them on either easement or whatever items to be considered. I don't know, Dr. Deagle, if you have a thought.
Have a meeting with them next week.
Mhm.
So before our board meeting, will this be a topic of conversation for the entire Parks and Rec board? Do you know?
I
would
can
you be able to
ask. I mean,
ask?
typically, it was before she came and talked to both of us about that, because she showed the map just to kind of show everybody where the trail was going to be and the linkage points, just so that everybody on the Parks and Rec board knew about it. So would you be okay with having that conversation in front of all of the Parks and Rec, or you want it to be more of a separate conversation?
I think we need to figure out on our end first the request. I mean, the way that this is worded, this is what their request to us was, right?
Yes.
I don't know. I don't know who we would ask if we have legal counsel that we would run this by. I guess in general, I would think that we should run this by legal counsel before we sign anything. So
I gotta figure, what's the one that's, the two that are affected, the so if you're a for-profit business owner, you're not going to give an easement. You're going to say, well, you can buy it from me, right? There's no value to them in giving an easement. That actually just diminishes their value of their property, right? To have a permanent easement that you have to go over their private property to get to the easement for maintenance. You see what I'm saying? So I'm wondering, should we proceed with this? Since I think we need to understand how the other two parcels are being handled and understand.
Did talk about what the general sense was going to be from Gatsby's and the apartments, and the way that the library was originally worked out with the way that they bought the additional property. It was already built into that they gave them the easement. So I think that was the reason why they were going down the path of, again, just asking for easements and trying to get it being donated, since it is for Parks and Rec and it is for the library. Again, not sure how that was received by the other two parties, but we can ask those questions. Yeah.
any other questions? Okay, thank you. Anything else that we should know before?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Mrs. Horn.
You're welcome.
It looks like we are at the end of the agenda. I can't talk or move through the agenda tonight. Is there a motion to adjourn? Thanks, Mrs. Coates. Is there a second?
I will.
Thank you, Mrs. Horn. Any discussion? Mr. Gooding, can you call the roll?
Mrs. Coates?
Yes.
Mrs. Horn?
Yes.
Mrs. Pickle Antonio?
Yes.
Mrs. Mooring?
Yes.
Motion carried.
Is 7:40 p.m. We're adjourned. Thanks, everybody.